1 minute ago, a government announcement reached 182 cities across northeastern Japan. The message was simple and terrifying. Prepare for a magnitude 8 earthquake that could strike at any moment. This is not speculation. This is official government protocol, triggered by something seismologists rarely see: two powerful earthquakes hitting the same fault zone within 4 days. What makes this different from every other earthquake warning? The pattern emerging beneath Japan's coast matches the exact sequence that preceded the worst disaster in modern Japanese history. Why are scientists more afraid now than they were a week ago? And what does a 1% probability actually mean when the stakes are this high? At 11:15 p.m. on December 8, 2025, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake tore through the seabed 80 kilometers off Aomori Prefecture. The United States Geological Survey recorded the rupture at a depth of 53 kilometers, shallow enough to transfer maximum energy directly into the Earth's crust above. Japan's meteorological agency measured shaking intensity of upper 6 on the Shindo scale in Hachinohe, a level where standing becomes nearly impossible and unsecured objects fly through the air. The tremor lasted more than 30 seconds. Buildings swayed violently across northeastern Honshu and southern Hokkaido. Seismic stations at Noheji recorded ground acceleration of 0.33 g and peak ground velocity of 44.82 centimeters per second, corresponding to modified Mercalli intensity 8, classified as severe. A second station in Hachinohe registered even stronger acceleration at 0.47 g. These numbers translate to forces capable of buckling steel, fracturing concrete, and snapping welds in reinforced structures. Shaking was felt as far south as Tokyo, over 350 kilometers from the epicenter. Power lines snapped in coastal towns, roads buckled and split, windows shattered across Aomori and Iwate prefectures. At least 30 people were injured in the first minutes, most struck by falling debris or thrown against walls as the ground heaved beneath them. But the earthquake was only the beginning. In Hachinohe, the city's main commercial district transformed into a debris field. Steel telecommunications towers buckled at their bases, leaning at dangerous angles. A major highway collapsed, leaving a vehicle perched on the edge of a 2-meter drop where asphalt had simply vanished. Torii gates at historic Yasaka Shrine toppled, their heavy wooden beams splintering on impact. Residential neighborhoods fared worse. In older districts built before modern seismic codes were enforced, walls cracked from foundation to roofline. Ceilings sagged where support beams had shifted. Glass storefronts exploded outward, scattering merchandise across sidewalks. Civil engineers conducting rapid damage assessments found that many buildings classified as safe had sustained invisible structural damage, hairline fractures and load-bearing columns that would fail completely in another strong quake. Evacuation orders came swiftly. More than 90,000 people were told to leave their homes as tsunami warnings blared across coastal prefectures. Shelters filled within hours. At Hachinohe Air Base, 480 residents and 270 vehicles crowded into emergency facilities. Japan's Self-Defense Force helicopters launched at dawn, 18 aircraft conducting aerial surveys to identify blocked roads and structural collapses invisible from the ground. The waves arrived smaller than feared. Kujiport recorded 70 centimeters of surge, Urakawa and Mutsu 50 centimeters, Hachinohe 40. Not the catastrophic inundation initially projected, but enough to flood low-lying warehouses and damage oyster rafts along the coast. By 6:30 a.m. on December 9th, all tsunami advisories were lifted. The danger, however, was accelerating. 3 days later, at 11:44 a.m. on December 12th, the fault zone ruptured again.
This time, a magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck the same offshore region at a depth of just 20 kilometers, even shallower than the first. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued immediate tsunami advisories for Hokkaido, Aomori, Iwate, and Miyagi prefectures. Waves measuring 20 centimeters were observed at Erimo and Hachinohe before the advisory was lifted 2 hours later. This was not a simple aftershock. In seismology, an aftershock is defined as a secondary tremor significantly weaker than the main shock, typically at least one full magnitude unit lower. A magnitude 6.7 event is powerful enough to generate independent tsunami warnings and cause fresh structural damage. It sits at the threshold where the term aftershock becomes inadequate. In Hachinohe, authorities evacuated 48 households near the damaged NTT East telecommunications tower, citing imminent risk of total collapse. Services on the Tohoku Shinkansen were suspended again between Sendai and Aomori due to power outages. A woman in Hirani was injured in a fall. Infrastructure already weakened by the December 8th quake now faced compounding stress. The sequence fit a pattern seismologists dread. The concept of a foreshock is deceptively simple. It is an earthquake that precedes a larger one, but the definition only becomes clear in hindsight. When a magnitude 7.0 or greater earthquake strikes, scientists cannot know whether it is the main event or merely a warning tremor preceding something far more destructive. The Japan Meteorological Agency uses strict criteria. If a magnitude 7.0 or greater earthquake occurs in the probable source region of a megathrust zone along the Japan or Kuril trenches, the probability of a subsequent magnitude 8.0 or larger event increases significantly. History validates this caution. On March 9, 2011, a magnitude 7.2 earthquake struck off the coast of Iwate Prefecture. 2 days later, the magnitude 9.0 Tohoku earthquake ruptured the same fault zone, triggering a tsunami that killed nearly 20,000 people and destroyed the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. The March 9th quake was a foreshock. No one realized it until the catastrophe was already unfolding. This time, scientists are watching. Between December 8th and December 12th, the Japan Meteorological Agency recorded 35 earthquakes of magnitude 1.0 or higher in the offshore Aomori region. That averages to nearly 9 earthquakes per day, a density of seismic activity far above background levels. This clustering signals abnormal stress accumulation along the fault interface where the Pacific plate subducts beneath the Okhotsk microplate at a rate of 7.9 to 9.2 centimeters per year. The fault geometry itself amplifies the threat. At the earthquake epicenter, the plate interface shows an abrupt increase in dip angle from 5 degrees to 15 degrees, occurring 80 kilometers landward of the Japan Trench. This abrupt change creates a stress concentration point, a geological weak spot where accumulated strain releases suddenly and violently. The 2025 sequence is occurring in the exact zone that has hosted many of Japan's most powerful historical earthquakes, including the devastating 869 Sanriku earthquake. But numbers on magnitude scales often mislead. When officials warn of a potential magnitude 8 earthquake following a magnitude 7.5 event, the gap sounds minor. It is not. The moment magnitude scale is logarithmic, meaning each whole number increase represents roughly 32 times more energy released. A magnitude 8.0 earthquake releases approximately twice the energy of a magnitude 7.5. A magnitude 8.5 releases nearly 6 times as much. A magnitude 9.0, like the 2011 Tohoku quake, releases more than 30 times the energy of a magnitude 7.5. This exponential scaling means that the difference between manageable and catastrophic hinges on fractions of a magnitude unit. Seismic engineers design structures to withstand specific force thresholds. Many buildings certified as earthquake-resistant can survive magnitude 7 shaking. Far fewer can withstand magnitude 8. Almost none are designed for magnitude 9. Understanding this scale transforms the government's warning from abstract to existential. On December 19, 2025, Japanese authorities issued an unprecedented advisory affecting 182 municipalities across 7 prefectures, 63 in Hokkaido, 28 in Aomori, 23 in Iwate, 35 in Miyagi, 10 in Fukushima, 9 in Ibaraki, and 14 in Chiba. The geographic scope stretches from Japan's most northernmost main island to just east of Tokyo, encompassing tens of millions of people living in one of the most densely populated coastal corridors on Earth. The advisory is titled Off the Coast of Hokkaido and Sanriku Subsequent Earthquake Advisory. It is the first such warning issued for this region since the Japan Meteorological Agency introduced the Mega Quake Tracking System in December 2022. The advisory does not predict when or where a larger earthquake will occur. It states only that the probability has increased from the normal background level of approximately 0.1% per week to roughly 1% per week for the coming 7 days. This warning was not triggered by the December 8th or December 12th earthquakes themselves. It was triggered by the increased probability that a third, larger earthquake will follow. Tsukasa Morikubo, a cabinet official for disaster prevention, emphasized in a press conference that the advisory is not a prediction but a precautionary measure. The likelihood remains uncertain, he said, but the statistical risk now justifies heightened preparedness across the affected region. The 1% figure requires careful interpretation.
A 1% weekly probability may sound negligible. In seismology, it is anything but. Normal background seismic risk in this region hovers around 0.1% per week, meaning 1 chance in 1,000. The new estimate is 10 times higher. For context, the northern Senryuku coast has a 4 to 20% probability of experiencing a magnitude 8.0 or greater earthquake within the next 30 years. Compressing part of that long-term risk into a single week represents a significant statistical anomaly. The Japan Meteorological Agency's protocol is based on global earthquake sequences. Analysis of worldwide data shows that after a magnitude 7.0 or greater earthquake in a megathrust zone, the probability of a magnitude 8.0 or larger event within 1 week rises to approximately 1 in 100. That historical record is why the advisory exists. It is not speculation, it is pattern recognition applied to fault zones with documented histories of cascading ruptures. What came next shocked even the scientists. The December warning coincided with the release of updated damage projections for a different but equally terrifying scenario, a magnitude 7.3 earthquake directly beneath Tokyo. According to a Japanese government panel, such an event would cause up to 18,000 deaths, primarily across Tokyo, Kanagawa, Saitama, and Chiba prefectures. Economic losses would reach 83 trillion yen, approximately 532 billion US dollars. The scenario assumes the quake strikes at 6 p.m. on a winter day with wind speeds of 8 meters per second, conditions that maximize fire spread through densely packed neighborhoods. The projection estimates that 110,000 buildings would collapse from the shaking itself, while 270,000 additional structures would be consumed by fire, 402,000 buildings destroyed in total. That number exceeds the entire housing stock of many medium-sized nations. The estimate represents a 30% reduction from 2013 projections, reflecting improvements in seismic retrofitting and the widespread adoption of automatic circuit breakers. But it still surpasses the government's stated goal of halving fatalities. Fire accounts for 12,000 of the 18,000 projected deaths, more than twice the 5,300 expected to die from building collapses. Another 16,000 to 41,000 people would die from disaster-related causes: hypothermia in unheated shelters, untreated medical conditions, stress-induced illnesses. Power outages would affect 16 million households immediately. Half of all telephone landlines would fail. Mobile phone networks would collapse as base stations lost power. Internet access would become unavailable as emergency generators at data centers ran dry. Tokyo's vulnerability is not theoretical. It is embedded in the city's structure, its density, its reliance on systems that fail simultaneously. Fire remains the silent killer in Japanese earthquakes. When the ground shakes, gas lines rupture, power lines spark, kerosene heaters topple. Traditional wooden houses packed into narrow streets become kindling.
Water mains fracture, leaving firefighters helpless as flames spread block by block. During winter evenings, when families gather around heating systems and prepare dinner, the risk multiplies. Wind velocity of 8 meters per second is enough to carry embers hundreds of meters, igniting new blazes faster than crews can respond. Modern firefighting systems depend on pressurized water networks. Earthquake-resistant cisterns and underground reservoirs provide backup, but their capacity is finite. If multiple fires ignite simultaneously across a metropolitan area, prioritization becomes brutal triage. Historical districts with wooden architecture burn first. Evacuation routes clog with debris and panicked crowds. Emergency vehicles cannot reach the worst-hit areas. The cascade accelerates beyond control. This is not speculation. This is documented history. On September 1, 1923, a magnitude 7.9 earthquake struck the Kanto Plain at 11:58 a.m., just as families were lighting cooking stoves to prepare lunch. The epicenter lay 100 kilometers southwest of Tokyo in Sagami Bay. The initial shock was followed 3 minutes later by a magnitude 7.2 quake beneath Tokyo Bay, and 2 minutes after that by a magnitude 7.3 tremor in Yamanashi Prefecture. Shaking lasted more than 5 minutes. Structures across Tokyo and Yokohama collapsed instantly. But the earthquake killed fewer than 11,000 people. Fire killed 91,000. Within the first hour, 100 separate fires ignited across Tokyo, fueled by overturned stoves, ruptured gas lines, and spilled kerosene. Strong winds from a nearby typhoon fanned the flames into a firestorm. Water mains fractured. Firefighters watched helplessly as entire districts burned. At the Honjo clothing depot, an open area where 40,000 people sought refuge, a massive fire vortex, a tatsumaki or whirlwind of fire, engulfed the crowd. Nearly all 40,000 died in minutes. Survivors described walls of flame moving faster than people could run, consuming oxygen and incinerating everything in their path.
The death toll reached 105,000. 91,000 of those deaths, 87%, were caused by fire. Tokyo and Yokohama were transformed into blackened wastelands. 137,000 homes were destroyed in Tokyo alone. 397,000 structures burned across the region. The disaster reshaped Japan's building codes, urban planning, and national consciousness. Seismologist Akitune Imamura, who had predicted the earthquake and been ridiculed, spent the rest of his career pushing for earthquake safety education in schools. The 1923 fire death toll remains the largest in recorded history from any single event. Today, Tokyo is a vastly different city. Skyscrapers are engineered to sway and absorb seismic energy. Automatic shutoffs prevent gas explosions. Early warning systems provide seconds of notice before shaking begins. But the city also contains millions of older structures built before modern codes were enforced. High-rise towers stand next to wooden apartment blocks. Narrow alleyways thread through districts where fire trucks cannot turn around. Population density in some wards exceeds 40,000 people per square kilometer. Advanced engineering reduces risk. It does not eliminate it. A magnitude 8.0 earthquake exceeds the design parameters of many so-called earthquake-resistant buildings. Fire suppression systems fail when water pressure drops. Communication networks collapse when power grids shut down. The gap between preparedness and catastrophe narrows with each magnitude increment. This tension defines modern Tokyo. Beyond the immediate threat in northeastern Japan lies a far greater danger. The Nankai trough, a massive subduction zone stretching along the southern coast from Shizuoka to Kyushu, has the potential to generate magnitude 8 to 9 earthquakes. Government estimates project that a Nankai trough megaquake could kill up to 298,000 people, destroy more than 2 million buildings, and cause economic losses exceeding $2 trillion. Tsunami waves could reach 10 meters in height within minutes of the initial rupture. The probability of a Nankai trough earthquake within the next 30 years is estimated at 70 to 80%. The last confirmed ruptures occurred in 1944 and 1946, nearly 80 years ago. Historical records show that major Nankai trough earthquakes occur approximately every 100 to 150 years. The clock is ticking. Japan issued its first Nankai trough megaquake advisory in August 2024, following a magnitude 7.1 earthquake off Miyazaki. That warning led to panic buying, event cancellations, and business closures as the public struggled to interpret ambiguous scientific language. Supermarket shelves emptied of rice, bottled water, and portable toilets. Beaches closed. Travel plans were canceled. The advisory was lifted a week later when no subsequent earthquake occurred. The response revealed a paradox. Warnings are essential, but can trigger chaos. Surveys conducted after previous megaquake advisories showed disturbingly low levels of household preparedness. Many residents in designated high-risk zones have not secured heavy furniture, stocked emergency supplies, or reviewed evacuation routes. Repeated alerts without subsequent disasters breed complacency. Psychological desensitization to warnings is a documented phenomenon. When sirens sound too often without consequence, people stop reacting. Alert fatigue kills. Japanese authorities are attempting to calibrate their messaging. The December 2025 advisory for the Hokkaido-Sanriku region explicitly states that it is not a call for immediate evacuation. Officials urge residents to review preparedness measures, keep emergency bags accessible, discuss evacuation procedures with family members, and sleep in day clothes rather than pajamas to enable rapid escape. Furniture should be anchored to walls. Helmets and sturdy shoes should be kept near beds. Circuit breakers should be tested. The emphasis is on preparation, not panic. Essential preparedness measures are straightforward but often neglected. Households should stockpile at least 3 days of water, 1 gallon per person per day, and non-perishable food. First aid kits, flashlights, batteries, portable radios, and copies of important documents should be stored in grab bags near exits. Families should designate meeting points and establish communication plans in case networks fail. Evacuation routes should be walked during daylight to identify obstacles and alternate paths. These steps sound simple. Implementation rates remain discouragingly low. Japan leads the world in earthquake engineering and disaster preparedness. Seismic building codes are among the strictest on the planet. Early warning systems provide crucial seconds before shaking begins. Public education campaigns run continuously. Emergency drills are routine. Infrastructure improvements have saved countless lives. The reduction in projected fatalities from 2013 to 2025 reflects real progress. But no amount of preparation can fully protect against forces that exceed design limits. Magnitude 8 earthquakes produce shaking intensities and durations that overwhelm even advanced structures. Retrofitting older buildings is expensive and incomplete. Evacuation of millions in a densely packed urban environment is logistically impossible on short notice. The intersection of high population density, aging infrastructure, and tectonic volatility creates vulnerabilities that engineering alone cannot solve. At this moment, 182 cities remain on alert. Seismic monitoring stations track every tremor. Government panels analyze data continuously, searching for patterns that might signal the next rupture. The distinction between harmless aftershock and catastrophic foreshock remains elusive. Scientists cannot predict earthquakes. They can only calculate probabilities and issue warnings when patterns match historical precedents. The tectonic forces accumulating beneath Japan's coast are indifferent to human readiness. The Pacific Plate continues its relentless subduction at 9 centimeters per year, building stress at the interface where rock meets rock. Every passing year without a major release increases the strain. The seismic gap identified by researchers grows wider. The energy waiting to discharge grows larger. Millions of people continue their daily routines above this geological time bomb. They commute to work, raise families, build businesses, make plans, all while living on the edge of a fault zone that has repeatedly devastated their nation. The question seismologists cannot answer is not whether the next great earthquake will occur. The question is when, and whether the warnings will arrive in time.